Today we are going to make a weaving with this cardboard loom, and it's a piece of cardboard with some notches here on the bottom, at top and bottom. And the first thing we are going to do is we are going to learn some kind of funny terms. And the first one is dressing the loom, and that is to put our first strings on the loom. And to do this, we are going to start with our crochet thread that you guys will have, and you're going to put it so that it's about at the bottom of the loom and put it through this first notch and pull it through the notch, and then pull it down to the bottom notch, back up to the first notch, back down, up and down into the notches, then back up to the other side, and just kind of get them through. If it starts to bend a little, just push it back and keep going till you filled all of your notches. Now you want this tight, but you don't want it so tight that it's bending the cardboard and making it difficult for you to do. You just want it snug between the top and the bottom. And then at the end, you're going to turn it over, and you're going to take these strings and you're going to tie them so that they tie diagonally across. So the first one you did and the last one, they'll tie diagonally across. And it's just tying it in a knot like you do your shoes. Just kind of cross over and then through again, pull tight, and ask for help if you need it. And there you go, you'll have your loom with your strings. Now this is one of those other funny terms. These strings that are going up and down vertical on our loom are called the warp threads. So to make our weaving a little easier, because these are so tight, they're so close to our loom, we're going to take popsicle stick and we are just going to slide it underneath all of our warp threads, and that will just raise it up just enough to make it easier when we are putting our thread across. Now you'll get a piece of yarn, it'll be a length of yarn, and we are going to use these needles to weave our yarn back and forth through our loom. So to do that, we're going to start by tying the end of our yarn through the needle. So just put your yarn through the eye of the needle and then just tie a simple knot going through the hole on your needle. And then we are going to start. You can either start going under or over, but just making sure your needle is either one. And I'm going to start going over the first one, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and making sure before I pull it through that I've done every other one of my warp threads. Now I'm going to pull this yarn through and across, and I'm going to keep pulling until I get to the end. Now I want to make sure that I don't pull it all the way through, but I want to leave a little bit of a tail, a couple of inches, just a little, maybe 1.5 inches there, just there. And then we're going to push it up next to our popsicle stick, right up there. So now we've just put our first thread that's going across, and those threads are called weft threads or woof, one of the two. They're called, some people call them one and some people call the other, so it's either weft or woof. So to go through the second time, we ended with our yarn going over, so now we need to do the opposite. So we need to start with it going under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, making sure that we did every other one. and then just pulling it through again. And just keep pulling. Now, when we get here, we don't want to pull it really tight, because if we start pulling it really tight, we're going to end up with our weaving looking like this. And we don't really want to do that. So to stop that, if we actually do it a little bit too tight, we can just use our needle and kind of get in there, or our fingers, and just pull it loose again. But what you want to do is pull it tight enough so that it's kind of right at the end of our loom, and just push it up. It'll be a little loose, but you don't want it so loose that you have a big loop like this, but just tight enough that it goes to the end, right close to the edge of our loom. It looks a little loose now, but as you keep going, it will tighten up. So making sure this one ended with it under, so now I'm going to start going over. So over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Checking to make sure you did every other one, and then pull it through. And same thing, making sure we don't pull really tight, that it's just kind of to the end, to the edge of our loom, and push them up next to the others. And then same thing, just going back and forth. So this one ended over, so I'm going to start under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and through. So now after you've been weaving a bit, you will run out of your yarn, and I can tell that that would make it really short, and because you're going to need to leave a little bit of a tail. So I'm just going to simply untie my yarn from my needle, or if it's really tight, you can just cut it. And see, I've got a little bit of a tail here. And all we're going to do is we're going to take our new piece of yarn, and we're just going to tie it through the needle again. Now, and you're just going to put it through the hole, and just like before, make a circle, down through, tighten it up, just like just a regular knot. Now this could be the time that if you decide to, you could want to change color of your yarn, but this yarn is a variegated yarn, and what that means is that it varies throughout the skein, which is a word for the bit of yarn, and you can see how it makes the appearance of there being stripes without me having to change colors. But if you choose to, you can change colors at this time. So now since my tail is off to this side, I'm going to start on this side, and I'm going to look at the row right above, and it started going over, so I'm going to start going under, because remember, we always do the opposite of the row above. So I'm going to stick my needle under, go over the next one, under, over, under, over, under, over. Now, if this is getting a little harder to do, you could take your popsicle stick and you could switch it down here to the end. Just slide it down to the end, and that will raise these bottom ones for you to make it a little bit easier. And you're just going to go through, and just like we did before, we are going to take and pull until we have just a little tail again. Remember, we don't want to make it really short, but we don't want to make it super long either. And we can just push it up into the next one, and then just like before, you're going to go back and forth. So this one ended going under, so we're going to start over, under, over, and under, going across, and making sure that I get all of them. It's a good idea to stop before you pull it through and make sure that you got every other one. And while the needle's in there, you can also use it to push up your weaving to make sure that it's tight there too. And if your knot starts to come undone, you can just retie it. And just keep pulling through, making sure that we don't pull really tight You leave it a little loose because as you can see it tightens up a little bit as you keep going. So that one ended over, so I'm going to start under. Over, under, over, under, over, under. So now that we've filled the loom, we need to remove it from the loom. And the first thing we are going to do is we're going to turn it over. And we are going to cut this diagonal line, thread here. And then we're going to cut in the middle the next one over. Then we're going to turn the loom back over and we're going to pull those two warp threads out of our loom. And then we are going to tie them in a knot. So you're just going to cross your threads and then take one of your tails and put it through the hole there, just like tying a shoe, and tighten it down and then do it one more time so that it's nice and tight. And then we're going to turn it over and we're going to cut the next thread. And we're going to have two here that are loose. We're going to turn it over and pull them out of the loom because we don't want to tie it back to the loom. We want to make sure that we take it off the loom. We're going to cross and go through the hole and tighten. And again. And just kind of keep going across, taking it off the loom and tying them together. Off the loom, again we want to make sure it's off the loom because we don't want to tie it to the loom. And through, tie. Just like tying that first part of your shoe. And just keep repeating until you have them all off of the loom. Off the loom. Now we want to make sure that all of our threads are tied to something. So this one is a loose thread, so we're just going to go and tie it to the next one over. Because if we don't tie it to something, it will come undone. We'll turn this one over. And we can tie these two together. And then we have one here that isn't tied, so we'll tie it to the one next to it. We have them all tied. And then we have these couple of our loose weft that we have here. We have this really long one, which is what is left. So we're going to kind of trim it to be the size of all of our other tails. And we are going to weave those ends back in. And to do that, we're going to use our needle. And you're just going to kind of put the needle in these end loops right here and just kind of catch it in those, a few of those loops going up or down, just up the side here. Get it through, going through a few of them. and get it right there to the end. And then you're going to put the yarn through the hole. And then you can just pull it through up to here. Now, so you've got it stuck along this a little bit here. And so then you can just kind of trim it and it will be tucked in there. So you want to trim close, but you don't want to trim so much that you cut